So it's Mother's Day, and you've heard it said a few times, Happy Mother's Day, but you just can't help but keep saying it, right? Happy Mother's Day. I heard that Mother's Day actually has out of all the days in the year, every year has the lowest crime rate. Says a lot about those mums, what they're doing on other days, huh? A little suspicious, I think. Well, my mom is here. This is my mom, Nancy, and my grandmother is here, and her name is Doris, and we call her Gigi for great grandma. And my children's mom is here, my lovely wife Dana. Yeah. And you know, for me growing up, my mom made a lot of cake. She's the queen of cakes. My mom has made, I tried to calculate it. I don't know if we have any exact calculation, but considering that I'm 52 years old and I have several cousins and my brothers and my nieces and nephews and uncles and aunts and all these people in the family and great-grandma, and my mom has made birthday cakes for everybody faithfully throughout the years. And so I think she's made at least 600 birthday cakes. Yeah, at least. But maybe getting closer to 1,000. I don't know. It's hard to calculate because I don't really know when it started. But it's been a thing for all these years, all my life, for certain, everyone's birthday. She's starting to pass it on to the granddaughters who are learning to make the cakes, so that's going to go to the next generation. But Mom has always made theme-related cakes, right? So, like, I've had cakes when I was really little. I remember I had, like, a Big Bird cake from Sesame Street, and I had a race car cake, and as I got into music, I had a guitar cake and a piano cake and a Beatles cake, and it just kind of went on. So, we're going to play a game called Is This Cake? Yeah, so here we go. Is this, I couldn't say is it cake because that's copywritten. So, is this a cake? Okay, so this is your way to indicate yes, this is a way to indicate no. So ready, set, vote. Yes, it's cake. Okay. Next. Is this a cake? Vote. It's cake. Keep going. Is this a cake? No. It skipped a slide. Okay, that's all right. So, no, that one, no, there's a mistake. Because the toilet paper is given away that it was cake. So, is this cake? No, it's a piano. Is this a cake? Yes. Okay, is this a cake? No, this one is just a figurine made of plastic. Okay. So that's a trick, because that one really looks like a cake. Yeah. So, one of the things that in my life growing up, as many of you know, I have this endearment for the Beatles. I love their music. I love the songs. I think I know all, and I mean all, of the songs. But as I reflect on that and think about it, I think I got that from my mom, who also loves the Beatles. And, you know, looking back, I think about how even my children have explored the music that Dana and I listen to. And there's a thing about exploring the music of your parents and learning to love the things your parents love. I think perhaps the reason I started really loving the Beatles, because it wasn't my generation. I should have been looking for music that was more rebellious or something that was not my parents' generation. But I think there's something in each of us where you want to love what your mom loves. My mom loves Stanley Park, and I have learned to love Stanley Park. My mom loves ping pong and cycling and kayaking, and she loves dancing. I can't dance very good, but so that one I don't share as well, even though I've tried. I really have. But yeah, this love of the Beatles. when I was a kid, I'd go over to Gigi's house, and there was a picture on the wall that is sort of like this. And I remember as a little boy, I'd see it on the wall, and I just assumed it was relatives. I just assumed that these must be my long-lost uncles or, great-grandfathers or something. And one day I asked, well, who are those guys? And the answer, of course, was, well, that's the Beatles. And so my mom was into the Beatles. I was learning more about who they were. And my mom had this collection of records. And one day, finally, I decided, well, if my mom really likes these guys so much, I should find out what this is all about. And I think I had only just recently learned how to put on a record player. Now, at this point in a sermon, 10 years ago or so, a pastor would say, for all you young people, a record is like a CD. It's bigger. But no one knows what CDs are. So it was this disc, anyway, you'd put on. And this is, of course, all the Beatles album covers. So I started playing them. And the very first one I put on was this one, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And I was just like, wow, this is good music. It's so creative and so beautiful and energetic. And I learned to love the Beatles. This is a picture of John Lennon with his mom, Julia. And I'm going here because John and Paul in the Beatles, they wrote songs for their moms. And it's beautiful. John's mom's song is called Julia. Anybody heard of this song? It's more obscure. Not too many people know it. Excuse me. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. And he was very intentional in wanting to write a song to honor his mom because he had a very rough experience in his childhood. When he was 5 years old, his parents divorced. And he didn't see his dad again. His dad was just gone. In fact, his dad came around many, many years later when John was rich and famous to reintroduce himself, and John figured out that his dad was just looking for money and told him, I never want to see you again. So that was his relationship with his father. When his mom and dad split up at age 5, he was sent to live with his aunt, and his mom pretty much shunned him. And his aunt kind of was keeping him away from her as well for whatever reason. So there he was, stuck like all of a sudden, no mom and dad, and it hurt him very, very deeply, this sense of rejection from his parents. When he was a teenager and he had the freedom to go look for his mom, he did, and his aunt didn't resist, and he rekindled a relationship with her and with her new husband, and he learned that she remarried and had these kids, and so he had these half-brothers and sisters he didn't know about, and he would go visit them every weekend and ride his bike over there and connect. And he rekindled a love relationship with his mother, and there was forgiveness and there was healing. And they would yeah, it's sad. They would listen to Elvis together. That was their thing. But then his mom died in a car accident. She was struck. She was a pedestrian. She was struck by a car when John was 17. So years later, he's rich and famous, singer, songwriter in the Beatles, and he decides he really needs to write a song to honor his mom, and he actually recruited a friend to help him come up with ideas and how do I write a song about family and what should I do. And the friend was telling him to think of early memories, and the early memory he chose, he acknowledged was not a real memory. He realized it was one he'd made up. It was like a childhood fantasy. And it was an artificial memory, right? But it was of walking on the beach, holding hands with his mom when he's a little boy. And that's what the whole song is about. Julia, Julia, ocean child calls me. So I sing a song of love for Julia. Beautiful song. And if you don't know the background, you just think it's a love song for a girl named Julia. But it was for his mom. Beautiful, beautiful expression. This is Paul with his mama. And Paul McCartney also wrote a song about his mom, which became much, much more famous. Let It Be. Mother Mary. This is Mary McCartney. It's not Mary, the mother of Jesus, as some people might think the song is about. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Okay, so I didn't mean for this to be a tearjerker kind of sermon, but Paul's mom also died when he was 14 of cancer. And so there was something about that bond for John and Paul as teenagers that both lost their moms at a similar time. Paul first. And so then when John's mom died, he looked to Paul for advice and comfort and how do I manage this? Now, these guys were not Christian. I've been even told, you probably shouldn't listen to so much of that secular music. You should listen to more Christian music. The Beatles were not Christian. Certainly their lifestyles were not Christian. But I believe there's a deep-rooted, instinctive, and God-given part of our human nature that just longs to connect with your mom. And if something has broken that connection, if it's rejection or loss or death, there's a longing to rekindle it. And I believe that's what they did by writing these songs, which brought healing for themselves. But what can we learn from these guys who maybe didn't love the Lord, but they loved their moms and they tried to express something to their moms? I think we can learn, and I just came up with this and realized afterwards that it rhymed. Don't suppress it, express it. So I think a lot of people suppress what they want to say to their mom, especially if their mom is dearly departed, or if their mom is distant in some other way, either emotionally, geographically. Just suppress it. This is a message for Mother's Day, and it's not a message to talk to the moms. How dare I assume that I could tell you how to be better moms? But certainly I'm going to be directing this message to the rest of us. How do we relate to our moms, not just on Mother's Day, but all the time? And what does the Word of God say about how we should address and direct ourselves towards our moms all the time? You've heard it said moms love unconditionally, and they do, right? Like 99% of the time, moms love unconditionally. They just continue and continue no matter what the child does to pour out love. The Bible doesn't tell moms to love unconditionally. They just do. But the Bible does tell the children we are commanded to love and honor and obey our moms. Whenever the Bible talks about, whenever there's instructions for children or offspring towards the mom, it's always coupled with the dad. It's always towards the parents. It doesn't separate the two. So, of course, in the 10 Commandments, we have the 5th commandment, not to be confused with the 5th Amendment. Sometimes when my children did not obey me, I would say, I plead the 5th commandment. I'm sure there's Americans online watching and they think it's funny. But anyway, honor your father and mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Pretty straightforward, right? Honor your father and mother. Obey them. My son, keep your father's commands and do not forsake your mother's teaching. Bind them upon your heart forever. Fasten them around your neck. Whenever the Bible talks about the teachings of the Lord or the teachings of your parents, it's very common for it to say, put it in your heart and put it around your neck or on your forehead or on your wrist. And so it's when it's saying that, it's talking about having an outward, evident representation of what you've learned or this love or this teaching. And then the heart is where it's hidden, right? And you should have it in both places. It should be in here and it should be outward as well. Fasten them around your neck. When you walk, they will guide you. So the teachings you've learned from your parents, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. When you awake, they will speak to you. For these commands are a lamp, this teaching is light, and the corrections of discipline are the way of life. So we are commanded to honor and obey our parents. Children are commanded, like in Ephesians 6, it says, honor No, sorry, it says obey. Children, obey your parents, and it's very much directed at children. And then you grow up and you're an adult, and guess what? You don't have to obey your parents anymore. You can make your own decisions. But the honor part, that sticks around. We are, as adult children, we are to continue in honor. Now, as you may have seen if you saw the bulletin notes or the heading up here, One Another Your Mother is my sermon title, and this is coming out of the idea that, in the Bible there's several one another's, and perhaps you've heard sermons on the one another's of Scripture, and guess what? That's where I am going. The command to love one another is like the top one. It is the most common. And while the Bible only really, when it's specifically talking about your interaction with your parents as a child, it only has basically the two words scattered in a very few places, honor and obey. Well, we can take a whole bunch of the commands that are in Scripture that are just general towards anybody and everybody and pick some and really apply them to your relationship with your mom. So that's what we're going to do today. A new command I give you, Jesus said to his disciples, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Forgive one another. So this is a few of the top one another's. Can it be hard to forgive? Can it be hard to forgive your mom? It can be. They say the telephone can be the heaviest object, or the pen can be the heaviest object to pick up if it means going to someone and telling them you're sorry or that you forgive them. Bear with one another and forgive each other. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. Encourage one another. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Be kind and compassionate to one another. The Bible talks about how when we get old, 2 Corinthians 4:16, it says, therefore, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. That's actually talking about getting old, and your body's starting to, fail and not work as well. And yet inwardly, a person can be renewed spiritually. Having compassion for the elderly, because eventually that's going to be your mom, right? Taking care of each other. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion. There, again, it's on the outside. It should be evident. It's not hidden. Compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Greet one another with a holy kiss. We have a hard time with this one, don't we? With the one another's. There was a pastor that I used to go to meetings, and he was there, and pastors' meetings, and he was one of these guys that's like, you've got to take everything in the Bible very literally, and you need to obey it. And so he kissed everybody, and the rest of us found it rather awkward. Like, he would come up, and the first time I experienced this, I'm like, hi, I'm Jason. Like, I'm just meeting him for the first time. Grabs my hand, pulls me in for a hug, plants a kiss on my neck. He's like, it says in the Bible, you got to do it. Yeah, I think that it was perhaps a cultural thing that we could translate into shaking hands, But apparently the ancient Jews, the ancient Israelites did this. It was listed in the Old Testament, to give a holy kiss, and it was part of the culture, and it's carried on. I know that in Europe, it's pretty common still, and they will give each other a little peck on each cheek or just a touch cheek to cheek. Dana and I are planning on going to Italy this summer, and I'm reading books on Italy, and one of the things it says, don't be surprised if they pull you in and give you the little peck on both cheeks. People will do this. Yeah, so greet one another with a holy kiss. Is it appropriate to kiss your mama? Yes, of course. In the Greek, in the New Testament, we have this word one another, allelon, and the word itself infers a reciprocity, reciprocal, that it's me to you and it's you to me. Love one another. It has a back and forth to the word. Has anybody ever heard how many times this word appears in the New Testament? A little trivia game here for you. What do you think? How many times does the word one another appear in the Bible? 150, 59, or 33? Okay, so the correct answer is it is in the New Testament as a Greek word exactly 100 times. But the 59 represents that the number of times it is an imperative, a command that you're being told. And so 59 is kind of the magic number that people will go with. But there's a lot of repeats in there. Like, love one another. It's in there 13 times. So it's obviously pretty important. That's the biggest one. Love one another, 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 love one another. I think I counted to 13. Yeah, it's like there was one for each of the guys in Jesus' entourage with his 12 disciples. Love one another. I don't know if that was just a coincidence, probably. But we are to love one another, and that is the top one. So I say that in order to subtract a few, because there are more that were subtracted, or I should say there are several that repeat, which whittles it down to 33 unique commands that say one another, have compassion for one another, forgive one another, encourage one another. There's 33 of them. So this brings me down to 12 that I chose. The 12 one another's for your mother. And this is just to come as a reminder to ourselves for every day, not just Mother's Day, to take the one another's of Scripture and live them in your relationship with your mom. So number one, be at peace with her. And this is where you get to that fun part of the sermon notes where you can fill in the blanks if you choose to, or you can guess, like I always do, what the next one's going to be. Be at peace with her. And so these are not, I'm not listing Bible references. This is based on Scripture, each one of these. So you might be like, he's calling these Bible verses, and they're not really Bible verses. They're inspired by Bible verses. Vernacularly speaking, inspired. So be at peace with her. So what does it really mean? Be at peace with her. Straightforward. And how do you do that if there's tension? In Romans 12, it says to be at peace with everyone as far as it depends on you. So being at peace with someone really is just doing your part, even if the other person isn't. Be devoted to her. The Greek word for devoted actually has the same root as our word for family. So devotion is connected to having a family attitude towards someone. Treat that person like their family. And that makes sense if it's the one another is talking to people who are Christian, who go to the same church, to treat each other as family. Certainly should make sense then if it's really your family. Honor her above yourself. Wash her feet. That was a big one. Jesus said, wash one another's feet. And of course, that was considered a ritualistic kind of a thing that you wouldn't do all the time, but we do it as a tradition, remembering the Lord's Supper, remembering that Jesus told us, wash one another's feet. Does it mean, when I bring this up, I'm not saying necessarily that it's really washing her feet, although it could be, but it could darn well mean washing her car or her dishes, right? Doing some good for your mom, which connects very much with this one, serve her in love. Number 6, forgive her. Which, if you've been around Community of Hope any time, you know that forgiveness and washing of feet go together, because the washing of feet, the way Jesus explained it in John chapter 13, it is a symbol of forgiveness, of the washing away of sin. Forgive your mom through actions of service. May those actions of service be expressions of forgiveness. Kiss her. Kiss her. Greet your mom with a kiss. Carry her burdens. These things could mean so many different things to different people. And I just want to share the list and let it impact people as it would based on your own experience, because it's going to mean different things for different people. Offer hospitality to her without grumbling. That's a dicey one in a sense, because we know that in the New Testament, the word hospitality is really referring to how you will interact with complete strangers, that you'll be welcoming and kind to people and invite strangers into your home and feed strangers. And if you notice that they have a need, to try to meet that need. Hospitality doesn't just mean have people over for dinner in the Bible. It means going that extra step. So hospitality to your mom could really mean reuniting, like John Lennon did when he was a teenager, and actually looking for his mom and seeking her out and entering back into a relationship that was broken. Offer hospitality. This one could go well for some people's mothers-in-law too. Not mine. Mine's wonderful. But you know that whole stereotype of the mother-in-law. Have them come on over and don't grumble about it. Be patient with her, bearing with her shortcomings in love. We can be, I think, hypersensitive to our parents' shortcomings sometimes. And there's a thing, some of you, if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. When your kids are little, I experienced this as a dad, you can maintain that illusion of your own perfection only so long. When they're about 4 or 5, they start figuring out you actually make mistakes. Yeah. And you make a lot. And we all make a lot. So as a child, be patient with your parents and their shortcomings. Be kind and compassionate to her. With the be kind and compassionate, I would say that my mom is a wonderful model of that. And she's kind and compassionate to her own mom, and she's been kind and compassionate to her own parents and to everyone, really. Pray for her. The last one, number 12. Pray for your mom. You know, when people are in a position of authority over you, which your mom kind of always is, or you feel it at least, right? We tend to think that they've got it all together, or they don't maybe need the prayer, or maybe they don't need the encouragement, that they actually need it. Pray for your mom. Pray for her well-being. Pray for, if in some cases, pray for her salvation, if that applies to you. Pray. Pray all the time. And finally, exemplify Christ to your mom. If your mom doesn't know Jesus, then be Jesus. The way you behave, because we know actions and words need to go together. It's been said actions speak louder than words. Sometimes. It's been said, preach the gospel at all times, sometimes use words. I don't know if I agree with that one fully. I think that you need the words, but you also need the action. James chapter 2 talks about your words and your actions. It talks about faith and your deeds, and you have to have both going on. If you are a believer and your mother is not, and you have the hope that they also will share in the joy and love of Jesus, then be Jesus. Be as much like him as you can, as it says in Ephesians 5:1. Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Stop and think about how much Jesus gave up for us, how much he sacrificed, him on the cross, scorning its shame, looking forward to the joy that is our salvation as he redeems us. Man, if you just ever stop and think about how much Jesus did for us, hopefully that makes it easier for us to think, I can be like this. I need to be an imitator of the kind of love and mercy and grace that he exuded at all times. And so, to close, Philippians 2, 1-4, this is a wonderful chapter that we should all know. I mean, if you don't, you should. Go check out Philippians chapter 2. Spend a good chunk of time in there. It's almost hard to only present the first 4 verses because it feels like a sin to not keep going with the entire chapter. It's just got so much good stuff in it. But this, I think, wraps up the whole thing in one little passage. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with his Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, if you receive it from him, then pay it forward. Then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and in purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider your mama better than yourself. Consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. Pray with me.